So now I want to continue looking at sketching diagrams when the bearing is given. Alright, so let's look at another situation. So the bearing of P from Q is 80 degrees. We usually use 3 digits, so if 80 we put a 0 in front. The bearing of P from Q is 80 degrees. How do we represent that? So again, what's the first point you put down? Always where you're coming from. Always where you're coming from. From Q, we're coming from Q. So you put where you're coming from, and also you put a little north line there. Because when you're doing the graph, in terms of doing the graph, it's from the north. It's really from the north line of Q, alright? From a line that is north to Q, when you're showing it on the graph. So bearing of P from Q is 80 degrees. Now, where do I put 80 degrees? Now, 90 along here, 180 down here to the south, and 270. That's where? West. Right, so 80 degrees, I guess it doesn't pass 90, right? So it'll be somewhere here. So we want to be practical about it. So the bearing of P from Q, so we want to put P somewhere out here now. All right, we'll put the point P there. We're not given the distance of PQ. By the way, Q, this is Q. So you're coming from Q, so you first put down your point Q. All right, and you're coming from Q, going to P. And very important, when we say coming from Q, it's really, so the line is coming from the north of Q. Alright? And this angle is 80 degrees. So the bearing of P from Q is 80. Let's say they give us the distance from P to Q is, say, 5 kilometers, then you'll put PQ as 5 kilometers if the distance is given. Now, how about this one? The bearing of X from Y is 120 degrees. The bearing of X from Y is 120 degrees. So what's the first point to put down? Where are we coming from? Where are we coming from? Where are we coming from? We're coming from Y. So you first establish where you're coming from. You're coming from Y. That's the first point to put down. And of course, you put down a line running north of the point. Always. And of course, sometimes we extend it past, a little bit down south. So here's the point. Here's the point Y. Alright, so the bearing is 120. No, 120. 120 degrees coming from here. So this is 0 here. But here would be, remember here would be 90, right? That's a 90 degree, good? So 120 would be just a little bit past the 90. Agree? Little bit past the 90. So 120 would be just under the 90. Alright? We put our point X. And of course, if we're given the distance of X from Y, then we can always put that in. But we're not worried about the distance. We're only worried about the actual angle. Or the bearing. Alright? 120 degrees. And of course, when I'm coming from north, it's always in the what we call the clockwise direction to X. Let's try another one. So here's another one that we want to look at. The bearing of A from B is 300 degrees. So the first point to put down again, what's the first point you put down? Where you're coming from. Where you're coming from. So where are you coming from? From B. So you always establish the first point where you're coming from. And of course, you draw a line to the north of where you're coming from. Now, 300 degrees. So B will be 300 degrees. A will be 300 degrees from B. So remember, remember that is what? That's a 90. And the next 90. That's the 180. And then 270. So 300 degrees will be just above. Remember, you're going around now. So 90, 180, 270, and back to 360. So the 300 degrees is somewhere between the 270 and the 300, right? Just past the 270. So I guess it will be somewhere here, would be a good. Alright. By the way, that's meant to be a straight line. That's meant to be a straight line, alright? So the point of the bearing of A coming from B, and of course it's from the north, so you take the angle from the north of B. Alright? So this angle will be 300 degrees. Okay, so there's another related situation there. We want to use a sketch to represent it. The bearing of A from B is 60 degrees, and the bearing of C from A is 200 degrees. Let's take it one at a time. So the bearing of A from B, so where are you coming from? You're coming from B. Alright, you're coming from B. Alright. Coming from B, so and of course wherever you're coming from, you draw a little north line there. Alright, wherever you're coming from. Of course, we try to extend it a little bit past the point, past the P. So the bearing of A from B is 60. Alright, so 60 degrees from the north here, it's a little bit below the 45. Alright, so you're going, alright, let me put, we don't know the distance, but let me just put it here. The bearing of A, so this is my point A, right? Let me call this point A. So that's the first part. Alright, and then bearing of A from B is 60 degrees. So this angle is a 60 degrees angle. Alright, you're coming from B, from the north line above B, right, to A. And the bearing of C from A is 200 degrees. So the second part, the bearing of C from A, so you're coming from A, so wherever you're coming from, you put a line there going to the north, wherever you're coming from. Alright. And coming from A, technically it's from the north of A. It's 200 degrees. So here, that's 90, right? That's 180. So 200 will be just past the 180, right? So we'll be about here. Somewhere there. That direction. So the bearing of C, so this is C. Coming from A, coming from the north of A. Alright. So this angle would be 200 degrees. The angle between the north is always, the bearing is always the angle between the north and the direction you're going in. Alright, angle between the north and direction, always, always. Okay, in the next video we want to try some actual questions now. Alright.